I've owned my lathe for about a year now, and the mill for a bit less time than that. In all that time, the various mountains of tooling, metrology equipment, and metal chips have been living a collective existence on the bench top behind and around the mill and the lathe. I have a cabinet under each of the machines, but hiding behind wooden doors has not spared these tools from abuse. We believe in equality here at Pearlybrook. A constant shower of cutting fluid and chips is a job requirement. Not to mention that it's the only type of shower you're likely to get while you're employed here, so you'd better appreciate it. If you watched my last video, you already know that I recently moved the lathe and the mill to live illuminated under the welcoming light of a rice sack. I'd be remiss if, as part of this move, I didn't make a home for some of the tools that most commonly live exposed on top of the workbench. So today we're setting out to make a storage apparatus capable of holding my most commonly used lathe, mill, and metrology equipment. I settled on a small tower design with a number of drawers, most of which use a combination of wood and/or recycled packing foam to create a form-fitted resting place for various categories of tooling. Lathe tooling, such as the drill chuck and centers in various states of life, are safely segmented from mill tooling, such as a drill chuck and collets. 2 separate drill chucks in 2 separate drawers. What a fantastical world of plenty we live in. Common tooling, like center and chamfer drills, chuck keys, honing stones, tiny rulers, go in various drawers loosely organized by use. As an example, I mean that locating tools go in the same drawer as the center drills, as the use cases for each often coincide at the start of some milling operation, despite them performing 2 separate operations. Along the outside, I made some holsters for a caliper and a micrometer, both of which see heavy use between the lathe and the mill. To facilitate easy access, I had planned to use a small Lazy Susan bearing I had on hand so I could easily rotate the tower to get at the various surface-mounted tools, and to easily swap between lathe and mill usage. Having assembled the tower, including this rotating base, I found that the bearing I had on hand was woefully undersized, and the resultant lack of rigidity in the tower made it a 2-handed operation to open and close the drawers. I was not keen to sacrifice my one-handed operation design requirement. Needing that other hand for various sorts of explicit exclamations when the drawers inevitably get stuck and require 2 hands to open them. So, in the end, I removed the rotating base, leaving the tower axis-less and frozen in space, though it still remains free in time like the rest of us. It's just as well, though, considering I only utilized one outside face of the tower to store tooling, foregoing the other sides in a fit of indecisiveness as to what should actually be stored there. Trusting that future me, a much older and wiser me, would know exactly what to fill these sides with, if years of wisdom and fastidious study deem they be filled with anything at all. That future me guy is next in line for a promotion, I tell ya. I don't have a lot of experience fabricating somewhat delicate woodworking projects like this. I'm sure an experienced woodworker could immediately explain a much better way to construct drawers, but what I came up with should be sufficient. I based the design, very loosely, on an old library sorting card holding cabinet I saw in a yarn store, which used to adorn a library devoted solely to nuts and bolts, judging from the large organizational labels attached between the shelves. This cabinet had oak-faced metal-sided drawers without any sort of guiding apparatus for them. Not a single slot, groove, linear bearing, hydraulic arm, or fancy-pantsy lever in sight. The drawers simply sat on top of the wooden cross members, each drawer held in place laterally by their fellow compatriot drawers in a show of unity and solidarity we could all learn a thing or two from. A simple design, yet when constructed with care, a robust and malleable one, allowing for a wide variety of different drawer sizes without having to intricately modify the enclosure should a new drawer size be needed. I wasn't confident in my sheet metal tools, consisting of a few punches, a pair of tin snips, and a nibbler, not to mention my lack of sheet metal fabrication skills. So instead of metal sides, I opted for some 1/4-inch plywood to form the drawer sides. The base of the drawers are half-inch thick fence posts, thick enough that I can glue plywood to the sides to provide some structure, especially relevant for the heavier drawers like the one holding the mill tooling. I'm sure there's some type of joinery that would have allowed me to skip this half-inch base piece, but having never joined anything ever, I defaulted to some wood glue. To protect some of the larger tooling, mainly by keeping it from rolling around, I cut up some packing material that came out of some package I bought at some point in time. I'd be more forthcoming with packing material details, but I hear mystery is good for audience engagement. The packing foam creates a soft, form-fitted bed for these odd-shaped pieces so they can lay their heads down comfortably when they aren't being jammed into the tailstock of the lathe and forced to do my bidding. A while back, I got a pair of Starrett calipers on eBay for $50 in a lot with a few other bits and bobs. The smaller calipers are 12 inches and use a dial. The larger, 14-inch calipers are vernier scaled. Both are a bit larger than I'd consider buying new, especially considering the price of these puppies, but I'm not turning down a good deal for an undesirable 6 inches of extra girth. I mean length. I use the vernier scaled calipers on the lathe and the mill because it doesn't rely on tiny geared teeth for measurement. It can be traversed much faster and also runs much less risk of damage from various metal and or potato-based chips flying around the room. Ultimately, these 14-inch calipers are what decided the total height of the storage tower, since I wanted them to adorn the outside of one of the faces but not stick out above the top where they run a higher risk of being damaged. Their holster is simple, just a piece of pine with a slot grooved into the rear face which the tail of the calipers rest in. The micrometer holster is much the same as the caliper holster, a simple grooved wood block which the jaws of the micrometer rest in. This drawer holds the various tools I frequently use for initial setup operations. This includes center drills and various locating tooling used on the mill. The chamfer drills got included as well, mostly because I got sick of them rolling around in the toolbox, tinking and clanking away at my fragile sanity. As much as possible, I drilled the storage holes in situ, relying on the wood to be soft enough that given a few uses, these holes will be easy enough to slot the tooling in and out of. To get the spacing even, with various different diameter tooling, where the spacing between each is critical based on their outside diameter and not their center point, I'm afraid we'll have to use math. As a result of various tooling lot purchases on eBay, I have a mostly complete set of center drills, with my largest being a number 8. A whopping 3/4 inch girthy beast that I will likely never use on account of my largest drill chuck having a capacity of 5/8 of an inch. I am, however, missing drills number 6 and 7 because such is the way when purchasing ancient tool lots on eBay. I drilled some pilot holes so future me can fill in these shortcomings without having to descend back into the depths of mathematical hell in order to facilitate past me's laziness. What a thoughtful guy. Maybe present me should get that promotion. The holes, pilot or otherwise, between my number 5 center drill and the number 8 pilot hole will eventually be filled with numbers 6 through 7, in what can only be described as a mathematical miracle. I highly doubt I'll ever have a reason to actually use center drills this large, but number 8 has forced my hand. Number 6 and number 7 must be acquired, if only to fill out the gaping pilot holes their absence has left in my heart. Poor number 8. Such a lonely existence. Truly, the largest numbers amongst us have the capacity to feel loss all the more acutely. For number 8's lumbering massiveness makes the distance between it and its tiny brethren all the more noticeable. There's some extra room in this drawer that I'm sure will be filled out in time, but I didn't want to go searching for tools to fill out the drawer since nothing stuck out as immediately appropriate. Before we get started on this last drawer, I need to take you on a journey of wondrous proportions. Welcome to Jurassic Park. Ah, damn it, not again. I decided to experiment a bit with the last drawer by using a piece of bird poop stained pine that used to form a piece of the wall of my outhouse. The bird poop and outhouse have nothing to do with the experiment, but they do add some variables to spice up the process, and if I've learned anything about the scientific method, it's that throwing in as many variables as possible, randomly, is the best way to make science fun and interesting. A necessary element when your experiment is nothing more than cutting a recess into some bird poop stained former outhouse siding. This drawer is the mystery drawer, the miscellaneous bits and bobs drawer, the all too necessary and oft lamented junk drawer. The experiment was to see how feasible it is to construct a small drawer from a single piece of wood by grooving the center of it out to make the drawer cavity. Small drawers like this have a lot of use in the machining world, holding various tooling, like single-point cutting tools, safely in a wooden sarcophagus. I ended up gluing some purely aesthetic oak plywood pieces to the ends, so the front face in particular matches the rest of the drawers. Foregoing the single-piece experiment, but only for aesthetic purposes, so my scientific integrity remains intact, according to an independent review board. The result is satisfactory, though the interior could have used with a bit more finish work I didn't give it. For the handles, I would have liked to model the library card sorting drawers more closely than the solution I ended up with. A small insert card, decrying the contents of each drawer, set inside a metal housing with a pull handle would have looked nice and provided a bit of structure for my oft-forgetful mind. I didn't immediately land on a reasonable method of manufacturing such apparatus though, not in bulk anyway, and yes, I am referring to a measly 4 units as bulk. We've got quotas to meet, damn it. So instead, I settled on some very basic T-shaped metal bits. Attachment is through a thread in the stem of the T-shape, and I'll have you know I only had to scrap one of these handles because of a broken tap. I assumed that the scrap piece I used for the first 2 knobs was 12L14, but it was actually the last of some structural steel, which, with a threaded hole this small, should really have had a slightly larger hole drilled in it before attempting to tap. There's a metaphor here, but I am a reformed man, trying to clean up my act after the innuendo-strewn filth in the last video, so I'll leave it as an at-home exercise for you to fill in. And if you enjoy filling in metaphorical holes, I'm sure you will also enjoy liking this video. Enough likes just might fill in the metaphorical hole in my heart left by the sad, lonely existence of number 8. I routed, sanded, and stained all the various pieces off camera. Which isn't to say that I didn't record the process, but rather that I couldn't think of any dialogue to place over the footage. So, while the work was done on camera, I will not be showing that footage. But of course, you're currently watching this footage that I elected not to show because this explanation of why I didn't show the footage that you're currently watching has given me some dialogue with which to show the footage that you're not supposed to be watching, but that you currently are watching. But of course, again, now that I'm showing the footage under the dialogue explaining why I can't show the footage under the dialogue makes no sense, and I am once again faced with the prospect of removing the footage to make the dialogue make sense, ensuring that once again the dialogue won't have footage too. I'm afraid that we've stumbled our way into one of the most dastardly conundrums any person can stumble their way into. That's right, friends. We have once again stumbled our way into the illogical depths known as paradox. The only way I see out of this situation is willful ignorance, trusting in the powers of science that the space-time continuum can shoulder one more for the team. or that Doctor Who shows up at the last second and screwdrivers our way out of this existential crisis with pig Latin-esque scientific mumbo-jumbo and a lot of aimless milling about in pairs down narrow corridors. So, without delay, let us speak of the wonders of shellac, that we may slather our anxious existential dread in glossy amber trappings, safely sealing it away under a layer of dried bug poop, where it can quietly fester into untreated mental illness. One of the reasons I like shellac so much is that, as a solvent-based sealer, the spirits used to clean the brush after each shellacking session are the same spirits that suspend the shellac in my pickled shellac jar. Shellac. Crucially, this means that, given time, the rinse jar will reach critical mass, flip over, and become the next batch of shellac itself, once the quantity of shellac in the rinse reaches a comparable saturation as the original shellac mixture. Shellac. My current rinse jar is on the verge of its awakening. I'll be sure to post a video on the fated day of so we can collectively celebrate a new being's first steps on the long journey to adorning some old half-rotten piece of outhouse siding. The second reason I like shellac so much is much the same as the first, the alcohol solvent. Should I ever get into moonshining, the only thing I'd be missing to completely make my own shellac is a heap of bug poop. Which brings us to the third reason I like shellac so much, bug poop. Of course, there are downsides to shellac, though the only one I can think of is that the constant smell of ethanol really makes me want a stiff drink. While I enjoy bug poop as much as the next man, I've yet to reach depths of depravity deep enough to want to drink a cocktail composed chiefly of poop, bug or otherwise. I also enjoy my insides working as intended rather than being covered in this delicious amber shellac. Please don't attempt to drink shellac. I don't have anything to ramble on about over top this assembly footage. Wait, couldn't we have put that apology for not showing the finish work here? Avoiding the whole paradoxical nonsense? Oh no. Just cut to the music. Hopefully nobody notices. Doctor Who's gonna be pissed if he finds out about this. As we watch this tool tower spin, a delightfully whimsical fate denied it by the drumbeat of practicality, I wish to recite to you a short poem in honor of number 8's lonely sorrow. The days crawl with the fervor of a contented sow. Mockingly she passes, solace found amongst the chasm that was once my euphoric playground. Deep in the furrows she dances along the tombstones, perched high above the unforgiving landscape, nary a care for the memories she despoils. Her rot sweeps great swaths away with each careless footfall. Cheshire's smile slips as a stubborn stone refuses to break. The aegis of a lifelong lover protects memory here. With a glance downward, a clean inscription reads, "For the night that ended all, wisp of hair, forgotten fruit, a storm nigh to weather. For the cloth that started again, faint wisp, floral scent, a buoy amongst the crashing waves. For the nights that will forever be, heart sent, paradise unknown, a utopic shield from the horrors of the world. I leave my protective embrace." And for once, the malicious grasp of time's chaos left this place untouched, cowed by the lover's zeal. Forevermore would this moment stand, in this place known only to those whom shared it.